I believe probably.
So let's see. Now. So the first thing I'd like is for you to tell the people listening your name and your title and what you sort of kind of do.
Okay. My name is Tom Blust. I'm the Director of Engineering for the Road Commission for Oakland County. My department handles about $30 to $50 million worth of road construction projects a year. We do the major road widenings, bridges, roundabouts, intersection improvements. Work with the communities to secure funding, buy the right-of-way, and actually watch the construction.
All right. Next, I'd kind of like to get an idea of what this is, what's an environmental assessment, and why is everybody here today?
Great. I appreciate the opportunity to do this. The environmental assessment is required under the National Environmental Protection Agency Act. It's NEPA, as we know it. It's a process whereby before a major road improvement is done, the different alternatives are vetted to be sure that they meet the purpose and the needs of what the communities are, that they're truly the best bang for the buck for the public dollars, and that they're not going just willy-nilly through areas. Sometimes there's a thing, for example, called environmental justice, where in the old days they often, put the freeway or the major, road right through the lower income areas because it cost them less for the right of way. Well, that's certainly not fair to the lower income population. So, we check up all the different impacts to the environment, whether it be wetlands, environmental justice, the air quality, of all the different alternatives. The alternatives we've got here today are just broad ideas that we kind of came up with after talking to some of the stakeholders here, some of the property owners, some of the business owners. There's a large conservative Orthodox Jewish community here that have walking facilities during their Sabbath. So these are a broad range of thoughts we had about everything from boulevards to 5 or 7 lane traditional roads with traditional intersections. So we're just trying to gather information, gather concerns from people around here, so we can then take that and sort of boil it down, condense it down into something, 2 or 3 alternatives that best suit the purpose and needs of the community.
Why Southfield Road in particular?
Well, Southfield is one of our most congested roads in Oakland County. It carries, south end, I think it carries around 50 or 60,000 cars a day. Anybody that drives the road here knows that there's a great deal of traffic delay at each of the intersections, particularly during rush hours, and the crashes that are associated with congestion are typical. Rear end crashes, angle crashes at intersections there's many driveways, so there's a lot of turning conflict movements. So Southfield Road has been on our radar for quite some time to do some improvement to do some widening, but we have to accommodate all the users, all the trucks, the 50 or 60,000 cars a day. The people have to be able to get in and out of the businesses that are adjacent to the road. So that's why we're looking at this right now as a whole system, as opposed to just one little mile or something like that in a microcosm.
A lot of the ideas that I hear about Southfield Road deal with either narrowing or widening the road, and I was just wondering how that would affect things if you narrowed it or if you widened it.
Well, none of the concepts include widening the road, because part of the purpose and needs that we've established for the road improvements is to improve the traffic flow. So almost all of them include the various concepts address helping the traffic flow a little bit better. So now there is a no-build alternative, which would basically just say we didn't do anything, we just left it as it is. That has to be a consideration that we have to take into account. But all the rest of them are either boulevards or wider reconstructed roads. Not necessarily wider. They may be replacing the same width of the road that's there in substretches, but all of them are for improving traffic, safety, and accessibility to the local businesses.
Right. How do pedestrians factor into this sort of kind of project?
That's a great question as well. In fact, you'll see on the different alternatives, that is one of the purpose and needs that were established by the stakeholders meetings, that complete streets or pedestrian facilities are important to the community here. So each of these alternatives address that as well. And we have to address it under the NEPA standards as well, at least how we're going to accommodate the different modes of transportation. And transportation, for pedestrians, bicycles, it's a legitimate form of transportation. We recognize that. We need to try to balance the needs of those users with the needs of the people that are shopping here, the needs of the people that are delivering truckloads of equipment and goods to the stores, and also the people that can just commute through. All those users have to be accommodated and taken into consideration.
Another thing that I was thinking about is funding. How would some of these alternatives be funded? Would you need municipal help with funding some of these?
Right. The project of this size, really the only funding source available to any of us anymore would be federal funding. There's a current federal funding bill that was passed this last fall, but it's only good for 2 years. So at the end of 2014, it expires. Now, so I don't know that by the time we get through this process, have it reviewed, pick an alternative, actually get to the point of being ready to move forward into construction, I don't know what kind of federal funding programs there will be for that. Now, typically, federal funding requires the local communities to put up a match. Typically, it's 80%. Sometimes, in the old days of earmarks, there may be no match required, or there may be a match required of the design and something in the right-of-way, but not in the construction. So there used to be other alternatives, but the current program typically is an 80% federal funding level, and then the 20% would come from the locals, and as our road commission projects, we split that with the local community.
A lot of the concepts that I've seen around here have street parking, and I just sort of kind of want to get an idea of what the thought behind that was.
Well, as you may or may not have also noticed on these drawings, an awful lot of the existing parking in different stretches is within the actual county road right-of-way. So in order for us to widen the road, we're probably going to wipe out parking in front of many of these businesses. We need to find a way to minimize that impact and accommodate parking someplace. That's one of the purposes that the community wants to do, and we understand that. We aren't trying to put anybody out of the business, but on the other hand, in order to widen the road, we've got to accommodate or look for where would the parking be, and so there's a couple of alternatives here that do have different types of parking. Now, you may also notice, though, that in order to accommodate widening the road and fitting in parking, that the impact to the adjacent properties and the neighboring streets and et cetera, that also expands as well. So that's why we're looking at all these different alternatives, trying to get some ideas, some concerns. We're looking for people to say, yeah, we really, really need this parking, or oh my gosh, if you do this, it's a terrible thing for my business or my family or whatever.
I know that it's still a little early in the planning phase, but I was just wondering what's some of the feedback you might have gotten from business leaders and other community members so far?
Well, that's what we're here for right now, to start that conversation. We've had some conversation with the local the communities. We want this to be a community-driven project, not just by the road commission. We really want the cities of Southfield and Lathrop Village and Beverly Hills and Southfield Township to really be out front on this, to to help us determine what they want for their community. So they've been very active with us, the communities, the different municipalities. The business community, we're just trying to start getting them engaged here. As I said, we've had some stakeholder conversation early. We were actually just about ready to go to construction. We were into design on the stretch from 11 to 12, and the city of Lathrop Village, said, oh, well, we have a different vision for what we want in our downtown area now. So in that respect, they've actually, put together a different plan for that area in Lathrop Village, and that had a lot of input from the community and from the business owners in the property. So we're trying to incorporate that as best we can and get input from the community.
In general, what would you say are some of the features and ideas in some of these different concepts?
Well, most of the concepts are, as I said, are widening the roads in some way or another to improve traffic service. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to make it a freeway. It doesn't mean that we're going to make it a two-lane road. Well, what our goals are, we need to address safety. There are a number of crashes here, particularly at the intersections. Most of those are typical where there is a high degree of congestion, or in this case, the many driveways, the turning movements, a lot of turning movements. So we have to address safety. We have to be able to get goods through this through this corridor to the different stores and through it, and the commuter traffic that goes through each day. So the concepts range from, as I said, just improving the traffic flow, widening the road, making it traditional 5 or 7 lane road with a center left turn lane, to boulevard with another access for a parking side road, if you will. We've talked about possibility of roundabouts at some of these intersections. Don't know if that's really even a concept that can work or not. We haven't explored it that much because there's a lot of traffic here, and it may be at the upper reaches of a roundabout's ability. So we're looking at all different alternatives.
I know you spoke to me a little bit earlier about it, but just for the record, during the Walmart meeting, there's been a lot of talk about the Oakland County Road Commission and discussions that you had with Walmart and the possibility of Walmart doing some traffic improvements. I was just wondering if I can get an idea of what you may know about that.
I haven't been involved with the Walmart conversation very much. I know that it's going on. I know that our traffic engineering department, traffic safety department rather, and our permits department have both been somewhat involved, and of course with the city of Southfield, looking at what improvements would be necessary based on their traffic generation. To be candid, it's a major road now with both roads, both Southfield Road and 12 Mile are major roads, and there are limits to what you can do with that without expanding and buying more right-of-way. I don't know what all they've talked about, but their impact, the generation of traffic that they project, those will be taken into account in this process, this environmental assessment process. But they will be going in presumably long before any improvements on Southfield Road are actually funded and underway. So whatever improvements they would have to make would be really on their own and not incorporated with our process on Southfield Road. Would take into account their numbers and what improvements they would make, but they're two separate projects completely.
There was another question I had in mind, but I think I forgot it.
Sorry. You wanted to ask me how long this process is going to take.
Exactly, yeah. About how long do you think it's going to be before there are any improvements shown physically there on Southfield Road?
It's hard to guess, as I said, without a clearer picture of what's going to be available in 5 or 6 or 7 years for federal funding. My guess, realistically, is we wouldn't see any real substantial improvements until at least 2018, probably later than that, and I say that because we have, probably this process alone will take another year and a half, or maybe almost 2 years, but let's say another year and a half before we can even come up with the solution that all the cities and the villages that they want, that addresses all the concerns that the Federal Highway Administration then approves, and then we'll start seeking funding. When we get some funding, it's a 3.5-mile corridor. That's going to be a lot of money. So I don't see that much federal funding coming at once. So we'll probably have to pick and choose something smaller, a couple of intersection improvements to get started on. Maybe we'll get lucky and get enough funding for one of the miles. But as with all federal funding, it'll be competitive. We'll have to stand in line with the rest of the projects throughout Oakland County with the different projects from the cities, Rochester Hills and Farmington Hills, and here in Southfield, and road commission projects. And we have a federal aid committee that gets together, rates all the projects on their benefit and their cost, and this will stand in line with the rest of them. That's why I say by the time we go through all that process and actually apply for and secure funding, it would probably be at least 2018.
All right. Well, that's most of the questions I can think of.
Okay,
Thanks.
I'll be around, Greg.
All right.
I'll be here. I don't know if you need to come up with something more. I enjoyed this. Sorry if I...